Phoenix Metals says it's revitalizing BC's boundary region. The company is targeting gold, copper, brownfield exploration, focused on both underground and open pit targets between Greenwood and Grand Forks. Backers include Chris Loader, president of Osisko Development, and Jeff Stibbard, founder and executive chair of JDS Energy and Mining. CEO is Nick Campbell, formerly CEO of Mayfair Gold. Nick has also had stints at Artemis Gold and Silvercrest Metals. Nick, welcome to Minus Daily.
Thanks for having me.
Let's talk about history with this project, Nick. Chris Loader is chair. Jeff Stibbard is a board member. Explain how Phoenix Metals assets came across their radar.
Sure. So Phoenix has been, this is a district, it's a copper gold mining district there's been mining operations for 130 years, but most of the major operations shut down around 50 years ago. And so there's a pretty significant open pit that was in operation there from 1956 to 1979. They took about 27 million tons out, grading 0.9% copper or 1.14 gram per ton gold. And then there wasn't a whole lot of activity here. There was a few little companies that came around. They tried to do a small restart. There was a few underground operations, but really there wasn't a lot of significant mining activity over the course of 50 years. And so Chris Loader, who grew up in Grand Forks, and Grand Forks is in south central British Columbia, he started looking at this about 20 years ago when he was working with AngloGold Ashanti, and he was a senior geologist there. And so he started looking around there, and then he got involved with the Osisko group. So Chris is the president of Osisko Gold, and he has also worked with Osisko Royalties. And so they actually looked at this as a potential opportunity for there to be some land consolidation, put together support a company that could bring an asset back into production. That didn't really come together. And he sort of took a few steps back from the project. Jeff Stibbard started looking at this asset around the same time, about 10 years ago. And Jeff took a slightly different approach. He started working with Chief Clarence Louis. Chief Clarence Louis is the chief of the Osoyoos Indian Band. And so Jeff actually reached out to Chris Loader because there became an opportunity to acquire basically all the major assets in the Greenwood Precious Metal Project by buying a company out of receivership. And so Jeff reached out to Chris. Jeff and Chris and both Chief Clarence Louis all came together to create this company, which has a really very unique background because you've got the JDS Energy and Mining that gives you the mine building expertise. You've got Chris Loader, who has a very strong geological background, and he's got his team that he's put together to move forward on the asset. And then you've got the social and permitting support associated with the Chief Clarence Louis and the Osoyoos Indian Band. So this is a unique company that's been created in partnership with the Osoyoos Indian Band with First Nation support. We're located in British Columbia. You need to have First Nation support in order to get your permitting. You need your First Nation support in order to have the social license to move forward. So that all came together really in the last couple of years. So a company called Golden Dawn, Canex, they went into receivership, and we acquired these assets out of receivership, added a few additional properties to consolidate the district, and we went public about a month ago, and we've raised $46 million. We're sitting with $50 million in the bank, and a very strong group of backers to take us as a public company forward.
Nick, could you talk about the most recent company that had a kick at the assets that you've acquired there? What do you diagnose in terms of what was the issue in terms of them advancing the project?
So the big issue with the district was a lack of consolidation. It was a lot of fractured ownership, a lot of small companies, and we would describe them as more lifestyle companies. So companies that would go and drill a hole here, hit some high grade, raise some capital, and then spend a couple of years spending that capital, and then issue themselves options, and then go back and re-drill a hole to get some interest in the market. But not a lot of serious exploration work was being done on this. So when Chris was looking at this property in a couple of decades ago, the comment was, this needs to be consolidated. You can't go and acquire the district, because you have to end up having 4 or 5 different companies that have a piece here and a piece there. So One company in particular did start to do that consolidation. They got together with a company called Golden Dawn, and that was a company called Canex. It was run by Chris Anderson. And so unfortunately, that company ran into some issues. They ended up going into receivership. And there was likely some mismanagement associated with that. And that's really what created the opportunity, because they did do that consolidation that was required to make this district a go. But unfortunately, they didn't manage the company properly, and they ended up going into receivership. So that created the opportunity for us. We moved in. We've consolidated we have over 12,000 hectares in the property, in the land. We've got 5 significant targets that we're going to be exploring on. We've got $50 million in the bank. We're the first company to ever do an extensive systematic exploration program on the district ever. And I think that's what's going to put us in a position to do well and to move forward and to really prove up some significant resources in this area.
Do you have everything that you need to have consolidated to put this through?
Yes, we do.
Now you raised, per your latest news release, that was late July, you've raised $46 million. You're planning 55,285 meters. You say within your deck that you want to advance towards a PEA. You also have a 2025 MRE to build upon. Help us out, Nick. Talk about what you can build upon, what you need to fix, because I imagine there's kind of a mix of exploration and resource definition that you're doing here.
Well, the first set really is more about resource, trying to prove up some deposits. Right, we do have 2 established underground resources. There is a potential restart that we are looking at, but the big picture here is that this is a huge copper gold district that's never really been explored for bulk tonnage targets. We have 2 underground mines, but the drill program that we're doing right now is really meant to define open pittable near surface bulk tonnage targets. And we've done, the reason why I'm here, the reason why I joined the company is because I think there's potential for there to be 1 billion tons of very good grade copper gold mineralization at a strip ratio of less than 3-to-1. And in the context of the current market, that would be a incredibly valuable asset. And so we have 145 holes that are planned. Most of those holes are focused on the Phoenix target area. There's actually 2 primary target areas that we're focused on. One is the Lexington mine. There's 170 holes that have been drilled into Lexington. We have a lot of information about that, and we've targeted about 150 to 200 million tons of potential open pittable material. And we think it can range anywhere from 0.3 to 0.5 gram per ton gold and 0.25 to 0.5% copper. If you look at other significant copper gold assets out there, that grade range holds up really incredibly well to what you're seeing in the market that have been acquired or that are in production today. But the big target is Phoenix. Phoenix is a historic. That's where the historic pit was. It's a copper gold skarn system. We're looking for the extension of the historic pit, and the historic pit was running 0.9% copper, 1.14 gram per ton gold. The area that we're drilling off there on the extension of the historic pit is a 1.5 kilometer long, 750 meter wide area. It's a big target, and then associated with that big target is a different zone. As you go south and west, you trend into this shear zone. There's a lot more tension. There's a lot more upgrading of the resources, and there's a lot more veining that's associated with this zone. There's a golden soil anomaly that is outlined over a 3.5 kilometer strike, over a 500 meter width. There's historic trenching in the north of that returned 5 meters at half an ounce gold, 2 meters at an ounce gold, and then there's some historic shafts that were drilled in that were developed in the 1920s in the southeastern part of the JD Golden Crown Zone. They were focused on a very high grade vein system called the King Vein, and there was some drilling that was done by Merit Mining in the 2000 knots that returned 3.5 meters of 429 gram per ton gold. 2.6 meters of 196 gram per ton gold. So very high grade, pretty good widths. Now, what you don't see in those historic results is there's also these veins and veinlets, a stockwork system that you can't target with an underground mine, but you can with a potential open pit. So we're going to be drilling off that target area, and that is a huge target. It's potential that you could mine out that entire, both the South Skarn and the JD Golden Crown with one single pit. Now, we need to do the work to show what the potential is. We have most of our drilling is focused on that JD Golden Crown area. There's over 100 drill holes that are targeting that area. That's where I think the big resource expansion is going to be. That's where I see most of the resources developing over the course of the next 1 to 2 years. So what we're doing right now, we've got 1 rig turning on site. We're looking at adding another 4 rigs imminently, or in the next couple of weeks. And we'll be able to put out very regular news flow on the expansion potential of this asset, and that should start sometime in late September.
Looking towards a PEA, or is that do you have?
So the PEA is related to the restart. So we bought this asset, and we bought it because of the potential of the district. And when I say a district to me is something that can support is an area that supports multiple commercial deposits. But we bought a 200 ton per day permitted mill that has a permitted tailings storage facility, that has a permitted underground mine at the Lexington mine. So, and if you didn't have First Nation support to move forward on it, we wouldn't be looking at restarting the operation. If we didn't have the permits in place for the underground mine and for the tailings storage facility and for the mill, we wouldn't be looking at a restart. If the mill wasn't on site, we wouldn't be looking at a restart. But we have all those things on site. We also have the relationship with JDS Energy and Mining. They're shareholders of the company. Jeff Stibbard is the director of the company, and Carly Church is our COO. She's worked with JDS Energy and Mining for 9 years, and she worked with New Gold prior to that. So we have the team in place. We have the technical bench strength to look at a restart, and we don't have a PEA completed on that. We need to complete a PEA, but from the math that we've done, from the work that we've done, we think we can probably restart the underground for around $12 million Canadian. And it's not a big mine, but it's a pretty decent resource. It's about 6 gram gold, 1% copper. It's a really clean con. It was, it was produced in 2008. It also produced in the 1970s, like 25% copper concentrate grade with about an ounce of gold and a couple ounces of silver. Really attractive, really valuable concentrate grade, pretty good recoveries. So we can get that all put together and potentially put that into production for around $12 million. We haven't included that in our budget because we're looking at an external non-dilutive source of capital for that. So we're looking at a potential debt deal or an offtake agreement that will allow us to put that back into production. And back of the envelope, we think this will generate somewhere between $3 to $4 million a year in free cash flow. So that's something that's important for the community. It's important for the Osoyoos Indian Band for us to get some production and get some operations going to create some jobs in the region. But it also gives me some dilution management. So it allows me to generate some free cash flow. It allows us to invest in the environmental baseline work that we need to do to permit the bigger mine. It allows us to do to pay for overhead and G&A, and it also gives us some capital that we can put back into the ground and use to expand and explore the resource base.
Now, you mentioned you're permitted for the 200 ton per day mill and fully bonded tailing facilities. Are there any other permits you need to secure?
Well, it's on care and maintenance right now. So,
yeah.
And we haven't made it. And part of what we're doing is we need to do the work to decide if we want to, actually move ahead with the restart. I think we probably will make that decision, but we need to complete a PEA so we can talk to the market about what the costs and the economics of that restart look like. And we need to make a construction decision. And part of that is also securing a debt financing package. So there's a dewatering permit that we need in order to start dewatering the mine. So we're working on that. That'll be part of the process of looking at a restart, but we'd like to get underground, take a look at the underground workings, see how much rehab and development work we need to do to make that safe and to make that ready for commercial operations. And we'll likely make a decision sometime in the next 6 to 12 months to start up operations.
Nick, what's the weather like up there? You're in, and in terms of being able to work, are you able? Because you said you had the one drill, and you're going to be adding more drills. But are you able to work year round up there?
Yeah, so one of the things that really stands out, or really stood out for me when I went to site the first time, is just it has the best access and infrastructure of any project that I've ever been a part of, and I've been able to be a part of some pretty great projects. Artemis is in British Columbia. That it's a long drive on a forest road to get to the Blackwater project. I worked at Las Chispas in Mexico. That had pretty good access and infrastructure, but this is the best I've ever seen. So there's multiple power lines across the site. There's a natural gas pipeline that goes through the site. There's a rail connection at Grand Forks that's 20 minutes down the highway. But you're nestled up in the hills. You can't see the mining the proposed mining operations. You can't see that from the highway. You can't see it from Grand Forks. You can't see it from the town of Greenwood. But you're nestled up right against the U.S. border. So you're immediately north of the border with Washington State in the U.S. It doesn't get that cold there. So most companies in Canada, you have to shut down operations in the wintertime just because you have to be careful for people and safety. It operating in a minus 25, minus 30 degree weather is problematic. So in our area, the average temperature is somewhere between -5 to -10. It might get to -25 for a couple of days a year, but most of the time it's going to be in that sort of 5 to 10 range. You can work all year round on this asset. We're not going to be building a camp on site. It doesn't make sense for us to. People are going to be living in Grand Forks. So living in a town is a massive advantage. It's much nicer to live in town than it is to live on an operating site. So it's something. The biggest issue for getting rigs on site right now isn't really rig availability. It's crews. You need drill crews to run those rigs, and they're gonna like working in our area. It's also something you can work all year round. The drill companies are gonna like that because we're not gonna have to shut down operations in the wintertime. That helps with their working capital management. So it's a really desirable location. You don't get extreme weather swings. It's something that you can operate year round, and it's a nice place to drive to.
Do you have information on the metallurgy and the types of rocks that you're working on? There are some, you say that this is a historical spot, and there also has been the past studies that people have done on there.
Yeah, so there's two pretty decent data. There's some decent data we have on the operation that was done by Merit Mining. So Merit Mining actually started up. The reason why we have a 200 ton per day mill is because of Merit Mining. So they built a 200 ton per day mill. They spent about 20 or 30 million bucks building a $15 million mill, and that's a good way to go bankrupt. So then that's what happened. They did process about 54,000 tons of development grade material, and that's where we get this sort of the metallurgical recoveries that we're looking at. It's around 90% recovery for copper, around 75 to 85% recovery for gold, and it creates a clean con. There's no nasties there. There's no arsenic. There's no antimony. I know people love antimony, but for the most part, antimony ends up being a deleterious element when you're trying to sell concentrate, unless you can create a viable product. So it's a clean con. It's a very desirable con. There was also a mill that was built in the 1970s, and they also produced a concentrate, and they sold it to Sumitomo. And so, and we have the metallurgical characteristics on that as well. That was a copper gold concentrate as well. Again, over 25% copper concentrate. So that's the percentage that you're getting in the copper con, and you're getting around sort of 85 to 95% recovery for copper. So it has pretty good metallurgical characteristics. Sumitomo used to buy the concentrate from this district. They're still interested in buying the concentrate from this district. We're going to have to do some more work, especially in the JD Golden Crown area. So the South Skarn, that's a sulfide. That's a copper sulfide. The Lexington project, that's a massive chalcopyrite. It's primarily a sulfide deposit. JD Golden Crown is more of an oxidized area, so we're definitely going to have to do some more met test work on that area. But for Lexington and for South Skarn, the met characteristics look really solid.
So Nick, lastly, looking at milestones ahead, it looks like there's just going to be a lot of drill results that are just going to be coming out as you kind of envision this large open pitable project.
Yeah, it's mostly going to be drill related news flow, which I love stories like this. I love being a part of a brownfield district. It's a completely different beast than when you're looking at greenfield exploration. We have a lot of data that's driving the systematic approach to the drill program that we're doing right now. There's 170 holes that have already been drilled into the Lexington target. That's where we're drilling right now. We've got 12 holes planned in there. So that's where you're going to see the first results. And we're looking for you should expect to see, and I don't have any assays. We haven't even shipped off our first cores to the lab yet. But while we're drilling these bulk tonnage targets, we're also expecting to hit some pretty high grade structures. So you've got at Lexington, you've got an established 2026 43101 compliant indicated resource of 424,000 tons. That's grading 6 gram gold, 1% copper. That's pretty good grade. But we're also drill testing the near surface mineralization. So we're hoping to hit some broad zones of mineralization that show the potential for bulk tonnage, but we're also going to be able to reinforce that there's high grade within that district. And the same thing at JD Golden Crown and South Scarn. We're drilling for bulk tonnage targets, but we could also hit some really high grade structures. So there's potential for underground here, high grade underground plus big bulk tonnage, hundreds of millions of tons of potential resources, up to 1 billion tons or more, depending on how successful we are. And that puts together a pretty interesting exploration story. So we're drilling. We have 1 rig right now. We got 4 rigs coming on site. We're working on the final touches of a new contract with an exploration company, a drill company, to bring another 4 rigs on site, let's say in September. And then we're going to have consistent drill-related news flow. And as soon as we start getting results out to the market, you should see an additional result or 2 coming out every month for the next 2 years.
Nick Campbell, thanks for speaking with Mining Stock Daily.
Thanks for having me.
The information presented should not be considered investment advice. Mining Stock Daily and its affiliates are not responsible for any loss arising from any investment decision in connection with the material presented herein. Please do your own research or speak with a licensed financial representative before making any investment decisions.